guys, it's Ariana. Welcome back to my channel. So for tonight's video, we are reading another scary story from Reddit. So this is from the no sleep section. I do have permission from the author to read this. So this story is titled, I met a very strange boy in the woods during a missing persons case. And it is from the user U-02321. And it's a pretty old post. It's from 270 days ago. I did message them, I think it was last year, and they did approve me to reading any of their stories that they have in the no sleep section. So I'm going to be doing that tonight. This story is incredibly long. So I know the last video that I did, the last creepy stories I did, it was a Let's Not Meet stories, and it was a very short video. So I'm hoping that because this is a very long story, I will only have to read one story and it will be a decent amount of time. But I'm already stumbling over my words. I already have trouble speaking, and I'm gonna go grab some water so that I can get through this story. So during these videos, I usually have a black background and I usually have my giant office chair, but I just didn't feel like moving things around today and switching my background just because it's a lot of work to get the black showing and then the white back on and having it all flat and straight. I didn't feel like taking the white off and then putting the black on, and then I wouldn't be able to use my lights because you wouldn't be able to see them, and it's just a lot. So I am just going to leave it how it is, and we're just going to have a colorful background for this video. I'm also not wearing a wig today because I did recently just get my hair dyed. So my hair is this really pretty silver color. It is really fun, and I just felt that it went with the spooky vibe. And then tonight's makeup look, I do have a reel going up on Instagram where I did this look. I'm hoping the reel turned out. I haven't edited yet, so if it doesn't go up, then it didn't work. But I did this makeup look in a video for Instagram, so hopefully it'll go up sometime this week. Let's just jump on into the video. If there is a random cut or a lighting change, my roommate did just get home and my dogs are gonna freak out, and I tried to rush doing this so that I didn't conflict with my roommate coming home and it being super loud, but unfortunately, things just didn't work out in my favor tonight. But here we go. We're going to try to read this as best as I can. So I met a very strange boy in the woods during a missing persons case. I currently work as a cop in a pretty small town. It's surrounded by woods and parks. The forests are not part of any national park system, but I feel as if it's as big as one. I have to be vague about the area because I don't think my boss would appreciate me talking about this case. It's still pretty big news considering nothing ever happens in this area. When a child goes missing in the woods, it should be big news. When two goes missing, it's more than news. I never told anyone the truth about what had happened in those woods when I took a day looking for those children. I'm certain that if my boss heard any of this, he would strip me of my badge and send me off to a head doctor. But I have to tell this in hopes I can get information about who I came across that day. I had an early midlife crisis and changed careers. I came from a long line of police officers and had planned that to be my future. But because of some complicated and boring reasons, I chose to do something else. Later on in life, I regretted my choice and did what I needed to do to become a cop. Even though I looked on the older side, I didn't actually have a lot of experience in law enforcement. The place that hired me didn't need someone who did, just a person that looked the part. Nothing happened in this small town, just some easy to break up bar brawls. Hell, they couldn't even be called brawls. I feel as if they only hired me so I could go through their ancient filing system and update it because my boss refused to do it. While I was organizing the mountain of old paperwork and cases, I found out that this town had a pretty regular pattern of hikers going missing. But after looking at the national average, I guessed our town wasn't anything special. Nothing sinister going on, people just got lost. I had only been working at my new job for about 6 months when an uproar started. A child had gone missing on one of the easier and short hiking trails with his family. His father had turned his head to talk to his wife, and when he looked back, his little boy was gone. They had thought that maybe he had ducked behind a tree to scare them, but after looking around the area, they had grown panicked. The mother stayed where they last saw him, and the father ran up to get help from the ranger station. They quickly organized a search for the boy. The mother stayed in that spot for nearly 10 hours, waiting and watching, not knowing what else to do. I'm not a hiker myself, but I joined the volunteers and searched for the boy. Any spare moment I had, I was doing whatever I could to help. I ended up with hundreds of bug bites and torn ankles from my new boots, but I never complained. A child was out in the woods, and we couldn't find a trace of him. Then a girl was lost. She was a classmate of the boy and wanted to help. Some volunteers humored her and let her run water to people searching, but she could only go a few feet into the woods. If she saw someone coming near the end trail, she would run up to give them a cold water bottle. She was in sight the entire time. Again, someone turned their head, and she took a step into the trail. When they looked back, she was gone. The people she had been walking towards hadn't turned their heads. They were completely bewildered and questioned what they had seen. She simply was gone in the blink of an eye. No one had any logical reason for it, so they didn't dwell on how the children disappeared, only that they now had 2 missing. Helicopters came and scent dogs joined the search, but after a week, the search was trying to recover a body. 2 children under the age of 10 in the woods for that long wasn't likely to last. I had been doing whatever I could in those days, but I felt useless. My boss noticed how badly this case was on my health and forced me to take a day off. After all, I wasn't a hiker or an expert in cases like these. I had done everything I could, and if I kept hiking, I would burn myself out. He felt like there was more than enough people looking so I could rest for a day, then go back in full force. I did not listen to him. I did go to bed early that night so I could be up at the crack of dawn and go back on the trails. I wasn't a part of the volunteer team, and my boss told them I shouldn't be out there. They gave me some looks, but let me go hiking as long as I promised to stay on the shorter trails and not go into the woods, which I agreed. I could get lost and then it wouldn't help anyone. I knew I wouldn't find any traces of the children on a trail that had been looked over and over at least 100 times before, but I still couldn't just stay home. That's how I spent my free day, hiking trails and getting more blisters on my ankles. I had a backpack with some supplies. Even though I had hiked for the entire day, I wasn't very hungry. I think the stress was getting to me. I still had some water and granola bars in my backpack near the end of the day. I was in the middle of a somewhat longer trail, and I had gotten permission to search on when the sun had started to set. I decided to start heading back, but knew it would be dark by the time I arrived at the end of the trail and got to the ranger station in front of the woods. I knew I wasn't going to find anything, but I still felt disappointed ending the day empty-handed. The orange light of the sun had faded into a gray light, a strange gray light that made bright colors pop. I had forgotten how strange this time of day looked. My orange shirt nearly looked neon in the gray light. Because of the odd light, I saw a bright white on the trail easier than I might have at a different time of the day. The trail had a slope to it. I had just reached the top, ready to go down, when I saw the white on the trail. I squinted to see a person standing wearing a long white and baggy sweater. The day had been hot and not at all sweater weather. The person was short, and my heart started to race. But this person didn't look short enough to be 7. It was still very strange to see a preteen just standing in the middle of the trail. I went down the slope towards them, hoping I looked friendly, and they didn't just book it into the woods. "Hey, are you all right?" I asked, when I was a few steps away from them. At first, I thought they had been wearing a long white hat of some sort, but when I got closer, I saw that their hair was pure white. Either this was a very short, older person, or this child dyed their hair. I noticed they weren't wearing any shoes and found that strange. Their feet weren't dirty from walking in the woods, and I didn't see any abandoned shoes on the trail either. I had no idea how they were just bare feet without tearing up their soles. Hearing my voice, they turned to face me. They were a child, like I had first thought. Their hair fell over their face, making it hard to see their face. I guessed that they were a boy, even if they had hair on the longer side. Alarm bells were just ringing in the back of my head, but I couldn't ignore the lost child in the middle of the woods. "I'm a cop. You're safe. My name is Hugh." I was carrying my badge in my backpack and held it out for the boy to see. The boy still hadn't spoken or reacted in the slightest, but he was at least looking at me, showing he was listening. "Are you lost? Where are your parents?" I asked as gently as I could. I couldn't blame the boy for being scared of a random man coming up to him in the woods. I hoped he trusted me enough to bring him into the ranger station so we could get help. We had to find out where the boy's family were and to make sure he wasn't in any kind of trouble. Protective instincts I didn't even know I had were kicking in. I wanted to carry him out of the woods to make sure he wouldn't hurt his feet, but getting any answer from the kid would be a win. Best not to make him too uncomfortable. He hadn't responded to any of my questions, so I got down to his level to keep trying. "What's your name?" "Ellie." I finally got something out of him. His voice was so soft, I could barely hear it, but I had a name. "I'm going to the ranger station. How about you come with me? If you feel comfortable with it, we could hold hands so you don't get lost." I saw his hands fidget a little at the end of the large sweater, and his eyes darted back and forth considering what I had asked. Because I had gotten down a bit lower, I could see his eyes through his white hair. His hair wasn't dyed. He was an albino child, judging by the pinkish reddish eyes, a rare condition I had never seen in person before. I read somewhere that people with this condition may have bad eyesight. It could be dark soon, and I was surprised that there was still light after how long we spoke for. Holding hands would be a good idea if he couldn't see when the sun did finally set. He came to a decision and held out his hand for me to take it. He seemed like a shy kid, so I didn't push any more conversation and took my small win. When we started to walk, I kept an eye on the ground, making sure I was guiding him away from anything that might harm his feet. I wish I had brought a pair of extra socks that day. Ellie was very light-footed though. He carefully walked around twigs on tiptoes as if it was second nature to him. I remember not wearing shoes as a child, so maybe he had just adjusted without them. I wished I had a way to leave a note where I found him. If his parents were nearby, they would be worried, but I assumed they would go where we were headed once they couldn't find him. I had my phone on me and was glad it still had a charge. Still holding Ellie's hand, I tried to unlock my phone with one hand, but it had froze, which I thought was kind of weird. It had never frozen before. I tried to restart it and my lock screen came back on, but the clock remained at the same time it was when I first checked it. The sun still hadn't set and my phone clock wasn't moving. I wanted to call the station saying I had found Ellie, but no matter what I tried, my phone just refused to work. I shoved it into my pocket to try and use it again at a different time. As we walked down the slope, I got hit with deja vu. I thought we had already walked down the slope. In fact, I just found Ellie at the bottom, but I ignored it. The woods all looked the same to me. I could just be getting confused by my surroundings in the dark. I was never a good hiker, but when we hiked up another slope and came down again, I was seriously starting to think a tree growing at the top of a boulder was the same one we had just passed by. My throat was starting to get dry, and panic was rising in my chest. Why did everything look the same? Why did the sun not set yet? And why would my phone clock not move? Oh my God, I have goosebumps. This is a good story. I pushed those worries down until we passed by the same tree growing on top of a boulder a third time. I didn't want to stress out Ellie, who had silently been walking beside me the entire time. Ellie, could you do me a favor? I don't mean to worry you, but could you just stand right here as I look over the slope ahead of us? I just want to look ahead. I swear I won't leave you. The boy gave me a nod, and it looked like he didn't want to let go of my hand. But he let it go and half jogged up the trail to the small hill in front of us. When I started to walk away, Ellie had crouched over and started to shove sticks in the dirt. What I saw at the top of the hill gave me tunnel vision. I thought I was going to faint. I stood staring at Ellie crouched over playing with sticks. I looked behind me and saw the same thing. This couldn't be happening. I had to be seeing things. Maybe Ellie had a twin and they were messing with me? I jogged down and walked over to the tree I was using as a landmark. I put my useless phone on the top of a root as Ellie was staring at me, and I gave him a small smile. Humor me, I told him as I started up the slope again. When I had reached the top, Ellie still had his line of sticks, but I felt a weight in my pocket. My phone was no longer on the tree root. It had returned to my pocket. What the hell? I asked slowly to myself. I had to be going crazy. Maybe the stress had finally gotten to me. I couldn't be stuck in a loop. These things just didn't happen. I walked down and stopped in front of Ellie, wondering what my face looked like in that moment. If this was really happening, then Ellie might know something. After all, when I had found him, the loop had started. But I wasn't ready to put any blame on him yet. I'm going to climb a tree, I said, hands on my hips. A hint of a smile flickered on Ellie's face. I had no idea what else to do. Clearly, I couldn't walk along the trail without getting brought back, but I wasn't about to risk going into the woods. I would get put back on the trail or get lost in the trees. Maybe, just maybe, if I climbed up high enough, I could see something interesting. Or maybe the loop didn't reach high in the air. It was something I could at least try. I placed my bag at the base of the boulder tree and started to climb. Watch my bag for me, champ. You can have the water and snacks if you want, though, I told Ellie as I started to climb. I wasn't much for climbing, but the branches were thick and close together, so it made it pretty easy. The tree was almost made for it. I slowly made my way up, getting covered in leaves, sap, and scratches from the bark. I didn't know when I should stop. I made the mistake of looking down and froze in fear for a few seconds. I learned in that moment I was afraid of heights. But I had to keep going. I had to get out of there and find a way to get Ellie out of the woods. I don't know how long it took, but I made it to nearly the top of the tree to where I could no longer grab branches to support my weight. I looked around, seeing nothing special, but I was still in the trees, so maybe the loop didn't reach that high up. I took a risk and climbed one more branch when the world went dark. I realized that the sun had set in a blink of an eye. I looked at the starry sky through the branches before an immense force suddenly knocked me from my perch. It felt like an invisible hand had grabbed around me and plowed my body through all the branches. The pain was nothing I'd ever felt before. I heard my legs break before I felt it. My ribs were crushed, and it knocked my skull, thankfully making my world go dark. When I woke up, I was at the bottom of the trail, right next to Ellie, who I'm pretty sure was just poking me with a stick. I screamed, sitting up, patting my body, looking for what had broken, only to find myself in one piece. I was breathing hard, looking frantically around to see I was back in the gray light of the trail, and my body healed. Not even the tree sap remained. I guess that didn't work, I said with a small laugh, even though I wanted to cry. My body was healed, but I still held the memory of the pain. It was a good idea. I don't think I've ever seen someone find an opening of the loop before, Ellie commented in his small, soft voice. He had spoken about the loop. I no longer could doubt it was happening. The whole thing was now in the open, and we needed to talk about it. I'm stuck in a loop, I said slowly, still not fully believing it. Yes, you are, Ellie said with a nod. He was making doodles in the dirt with his stick, as if the strangest thing wasn't happening, like all of this was normal. I stared at him and the sticks he had placed in a circle in the dirt, and a thought suddenly came to me. I'm stuck, but you're not. The sticks Ellie had been playing with remained when my phone had returned to me. It may have been because Ellie hadn't moved, but his wording made me clue in. He didn't agree we were both stuck, just myself. I pulled my pack next to him and patted on it, giving him a place to comfortably sit. All right, champ, take a seat and let's figure out what's going on. With both of us and unlimited time, I'm sure we can figure out why this is happening. You're not going to accuse me of trapping you? Ellie said, and the surprised tone in his voice was the most emotion he had showed me since we met. Nope, you don't seem like the type. I could have swore I saw his ears turn a little red through his hair. He sat on the backpack, knees tucked inside the sweater, making him look very small. But for the small child he was, I knew in that moment he may not be human. But lucky for myself, he had the answers to what was going on. Humans are born to die. Most creatures are. You cannot understand the endless existence. Not truly understand it. If you did, you would become something else. That is the purpose of this loop. for you to become something else. In this place, you cannot die. You just remain for your mind to rot or turn. The one that created this place reproduces this way. If your mind turns and you become something else, it twists your flesh into something that's same as itself. The ones who cannot make the change are eaten. The loop keeps the victims fresh. I assume the missing children on the trail were taken for food. Children don't often manage the change. I got goosebumps listening to Ellie's words. I hated the idea of those two kids being trapped the way that I was. Stuck in a forever loop, not understanding what was happening, and not being able to get out. I was lucky enough to come across someone to explain things to me. Ellie kept talking, so I pushed my thoughts aside to listen. Humans cannot break this loop. I am not human, so I cannot be trapped here. But I cannot break this loop to save you. It goes against what I am. I cannot save a human from a creature of the night. I, however, can make this offer to you once. I can turn you into something else. Once you come to my side, I can save you. I can remove you from the woods, but I cannot guarantee humanity. You may end up as something far worse than the creature that has trapped you here. Ellie stared at me so intensely with his red eyes. I felt like the forest was closing in on me, waiting to hear my answer. I could either become a creature after suffering through the endless amount of time, or take him up on his offer and become something else, or take a huge risk. No thank you, I said with a small smile. To my surprise, Ellie smiled back. A small one, but still a smile. I knew he wasn't going to offer to turn me again, but I also knew Ellie was here for a reason. Maybe that reason would get me out of this mess. It's best for you to stay silent as I take care of why I came here. I cannot promise your life. I need to summon the creature who made this loop and speak with it. It may eat you, Ellie said as he stood up. I watched him as he walked to the middle of the trail. He stood waiting for me to nod and give him a small wave telling him I was ready to maybe die in the next few minutes. Not much else I could really do about it. He gave a small nod back, then stomped down hard on the dirt-packed ground. I thought I heard some sort of hollow echo and the faintest silver of light coming from him when he had stomped. My body sensed the creature before I saw it. Every hair on the back of my neck stood on end and my hands started to shake. I had never been so scared in my life. I would honestly rather be thrown from a tree 100 times than be sitting on the trail when that creature showed itself. It was an enormous black mass that flickered through the trees like a ghost. Its white glowing eyes and clawed black hands looked solid enough though. Wrapping one hand around a tree, it looked so big it could easily rip that tree from its roots. Even though it was massive, its voice was barely a whisper. It was right in front of us, and yet I could barely get a good look. It was like my eyes refused to focus on that thing, and I was glad for that. What creature has wandered into my forest? It reached out a large claw toward Ellie, who stood firm. Even in my state, I wanted to run out and protect him. The claw stopped right in front of his face when Ellie started to speak. You have created far too many children. Your limit was 2. You are taking too many humans to feed them, and I suspect you took the other humans to create a new. Ellie's strong words were cut off by a rasping laugh from the woods that made my skin crawl. The forest is mine. I can make as many children as I like. Now be gone. The massive claw came down to crush poor Ellie, and I shot to my feet. I was far too slow, but my concern was not needed. The moment the ghastly claw came down, it exploded to a silver mist. The creature let out a shriek of pain and darted further back into the woods, nursing its wound. Ellie had not moved and his back was turned to me, but I could feel he was very angry. You cannot be, the monster hissed with a voice full of hate. The Silver King is dead. I can never die. And you have insulted me beyond going past your child limit. As a punishment, you must kill the most recent ones you have created. You must also break the loop of the humans you have trapped. Humans that are more suited to be returned to their world, adjusted to live peacefully. You'll go hungry for a while, but be thankful for your life. The monster hissed, more darting back and forth between the trees, considering what to do. It clearly wanted to kill Ellie, but couldn't. I didn't believe that Ellie, the small child before me, was more scarier than the dark thing in the woods. But the proof was the thing not attacking. With more pacing and hateful hissing, it agreed. Oh, thank you, my dear Silver King, for sparing my life this night. I shall never forget. Never. I had never heard such pure hate. It made me feel sick just listening to that dreadful voice. I had no idea how Ellie stood so still with them directed towards him. He was a tough kid, it seemed. I expected something special to happen, but I just blinked and everything returned to normal. It was dark, meaning the sun had finally set. Ellie stood in the same spot, the monster in the woods gone. I checked my phone, finding it was working, but I didn't use it to call for help. I knew I was safe to walk to the end of the trail and out of the woods. Ellie looked at me with a hard-to-read look on his face. It lightened when I offered my hand to him so we could continue the way we had started. Even in the dark, I saw his face flush a little. He was a big, important figure among very scary creatures. I don't think he was often treated like the child he was, and he appreciated the gesture. I wish I had spoken to him on our walk. I didn't know what to say after everything I had seen. I was going through ideas in my head when I saw something else on the trail in front of us. My throat closed, and I felt tears come to my eyes. The missing children stood alone, holding hands and looking very scared. I let go of Ellie's hand to run over to the poor lost kids. I checked them over, finding them to be safe and perfectly fine. But when I looked back, Ellie was gone. I was a bit suspicious bringing 2 of the missing kids out of the woods by myself. 2 kids that should have been dead and looked the same as they had when they had first gone missing. But I had a solid alibi when they had been on the trails. One was a camera on me buying gas, and the other was me with 10 other volunteers when the little had gone missing. Some people thought I was working with the ones who had taken them, but with no proof, the matter was dropped. No one could explain what had happened, and I was not offering my strange tale. The kids said that they had just been stuck in one spot for a very long time and didn't get hungry. Since they were so young, the police didn't know what to make of it. The case came to a standstill, but most people were just happy the kids were found. Since then, I wonder about Ellie. I can't help but think how he's doing out there and if he's safe. Of course he's safe. He seemed like a big deal, but I can't help myself. I've been looking and trying to find any mention of him, but so far nothing. If you run into him out there, please trust him and treat him nicely. He has a tough job. And please tell him Hugh says hello and wants to know that he's doing all right. And that's the end of the story. So that's a really long story, but oh my God, it's so good. Like, that is one of my favorite stories that I've read on the No Sleep section in Reddit. It is such a good story. It captivated me the entire time. It gave me chills. It gave me goosebumps. Like, the very first time that I ever read it, I was like, holy shit, this author is so good at telling scary stories. I'm so impressed. This was an amazing story, and I'm really excited to read more from this author because they really captivated me and kept me going, and I was so into the story, and it's just so good. Like, my gosh, I love that story. But I hope you guys enjoyed this story. So I will link it down below in my description box down below so you guys can read it yourself, and you can check out their Reddit page and find all of their other stories that they have written, because they have a lot, and I'm excited to go read more of them because that one was so good. So like I said at the beginning of this video, this is a really long story, so we're already at like 27 minutes, so I'm not going to read another one because that will make this video just way too long. But I do really like longer style stories like this, even though I suck at reading and I stumbled over my words like a million times trying to read this. But I like longer stories, so if you guys have any scary stories or any Let's Not Meet stories or any true ghost stories or any stories you want to share with me, please let me know in the comments down below, and I'll definitely read them on my channel with you guys because I love reading freaky, scary, Let's Not Meet, just any kind of creepy story I'm into. So let me know in the comments down below if you have anything you want me to read or narrate on my channel. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy this video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below for more content like this, and I will see you guys at the next video. Bye!